hold all questions that you may have in the presentation, um, and then we can address those questions and comments as they arise. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chanel. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. I hope I'm loud enough. If I'm not, please let me know and I'll speak louder. So we're going to get started with the Individual with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Waiver Amendment. Just wanted to give some background information. Currently, we have on our waiver application, we have for waiver year 4, 1,903 unduplicated recipients slots available. We currently have 1,808 people enrolled in the waiver, and we've enrolled 43 people in fiscal year 20. The proposed changes we are recommending for this amendment based on review of IDD waiver service utilization. The district is proposing changes to 8 IDD waiver services: assistive technology, day habilitation, employment readiness, host home without transportation, residential habilitation, respite, supported living, and wellness services to align the scope with actual person's needs and encourage the use of natural supports in lieu of paid supports. There are 3 types of proposed changes. We've made changes to the amount, duration, and scope of several services, systemic changes that relate to systems improvements, including the new DDS-DDA formal complaint system, and also reimbursement rate changes to comply with the district's Universal Paid Leave Act and Living Wage Act. So here are the proposed changes to day services. The district is proposing the following service limitations to better promote community integration and ensure appropriate utilization of facility-based services. For day habilitation, we're adding the restriction that there are no authorized increase in the number of facility-based settings for current or new providers, with the exception of small group day hab settings. Employment readiness, we're adding the restriction that there are no authorized increase in the number of facility-based settings for current or new providers. Proposed service changes for residential services. The district believes there is sufficient capacity of facility-based providers to meet the needs of IDD waiver participants for the services outlined, and we want to discourage potential over-reliance on facility-based placements for people who are able to receive services in less restrictive, more integrated settings. So those proposed changes include, when it comes to host home, we're just modifying the requirements to add that this service is for people who have limited informal supports plus an assessed need and would benefit from being in a family environment. For supported living, we're adding a restriction for no new supported living residences, SLRs, unless determined essential by the DDA Deputy Director. For residential habilitation, we added a restriction for no new residential habilitation homes. For respite, we're modifying the requirements to add that respite cannot be offered in an ICF. This has always been the case, but we are just putting it in the waiver so that there is no uncertainty about that. And also, respite cannot be offered in a residential habilitation setting if that will cause the setting to become greater than 4 people in the home. We're transitioning now into our wellness utilization changes. Service changes. So I just wanted to show you some data for our wellness utilization. So currently in waiver year 4 of the first quarter, the average units per user for bereavement services were 4 units. Fitness services, we averaged 65 units per person. For small group fitness, the average units per person was 71. For massage therapy, the average units per user were 66. For nutrition, the average units per user were 21. And sexual education, average units per user was 30. But before we get there, we just want to talk, right. So we're going to talk about the proposed service changes to assistive technology. In the interest of increasing flexibility for people utilizing the service and to allow residential providers to assist with purchasing needed equipment, the district is proposing the following changes to the assistive technology service. We're going to amend provider qualifications by adding all residential providers to automatically be enrolled in as assistive tech providers. Now on to the proposed wellness service changes. The district is proposing the following changes to wellness services to promote the use of natural supports and ensure appropriate service utilization and delivery. For massage therapy, we're proposing limiting the service to 52 hours per year, which is a decrease from 100 hours per ISP year, with extension to 100 hours per ISP year with approval by the DDA Deputy Director based upon assessed medical or clinical need. An example is someone who with cerebral palsy who have severe contractures and would benefit from massage therapy. With sexual education, we're recommending limiting to 52 hours per ISP year, which is down from 100 hours per ISP year. For wellness services, continued fitness, we're limiting to 52 hours per year for people who use host home supported living with transportation, residential habilitation, or in-home supports who otherwise have natural supports available who can help the person practice the skills they learn in fitness and achieve their fitness goals. There are exceptions where we can authorize up to 104 hours per year for people who live in natural homes without in-home supports and do not have such natural supports available. For example, a person who's currently living with aging parents. With nutrition, we're proposing limiting nutrition to 26 hours per year, which is a decrease from 100 hours per year, plus add a requirement that the person have natural or paid supports who can help them implement the learning and nutrition goals outside of the time with the nutritionist. The district will not cover or reimburse for additional hours unless approval is given by the DDA deputy director, based upon assessed medical clinical need. Now we're going to move on to proposed systemic changes, and SAPI program manager Crystal Thomas is going to discuss the proposed systemic changes.
Thank you, Chanel. Good morning, everyone.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I just want to let you know there are people on the telephone that is just still waiting for it to be joined in. I guess they only can participate by telephone. So I just wanted to let you know that. The dial-in number with the code to it?
Correct.
Okay, there are some participants that's been waiting for the call to start for this presentation, and it's just still, no one has joined them in. So I just wanted to let you know. I was one of those participants. There are probably like 5 more, but I end up coming in on the WebEx.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chanel. In terms of our proposed systemic changes, the district is proposing that the following changes and system improvements to comply with our statutory requirements and increase opportunities for people to communicate grievances and clarify roles, responsibilities with regards to reporting and review of unmet needs. Hold on just a moment. Hold on just a moment. We're going to try and troubleshoot. Just a moment. Thank you for your patience. The person who just informed us about people using a different access number, can you provide me with that information, that number? And if you can unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, say again?
Can you give us that information, the access number that you used previously?
sure.
The first number that I use, access code, is 472477560.
And I used a different access number, which was 479-487-70.
709.
Yep, 709.
Yeah, now right now I'm using that one.
Okay.
'Cause
Okay.
I think the email went out and it has we didn't realize that yesterday there was a call, and then today there's a call, and then tomorrow there's another call. So that's probably when the email went out as one, it didn't show that there was separate calls and everything. So that's probably why you had people in different ones. But the 709 says it's for the call to that was for yesterday, and then the one for today, there's a different number that is 560-472-477-560 is the call for today.
Okay. So if everyone can hold tight, we are going to contact that line to support and assist people to accessing the correct line to access this forum. So if everyone can hold tight, we don't want to continue with the presentation until everyone has the opportunity to hear. Okay?
Sure,
so if you just hold for a moment, and we will resume as soon as we can contact the people on the other lines to get everyone in one space. Hold one moment.
मैं slow कर दूंगा अभी. Let me connect it.
Hello, do we have any people who are on this line who are wanting to join the public forum on the amendments to the DDS IDD waiver?
It sounds like you're on a correct line, Andy.
Okay. I'll try the other one.
Okay.
But I just used the one that they told us was incorrect.
Does the incorrect still work, or do we have to go to the other line?
You're in the right space. You're on the right call right now, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Crystal, am I back with you or on the other one?
You're back with me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your patience. We'll move forward with the presentation. In terms of our proposed systemic changes, the district is proposing the following changes and systems improvements to comply with statutory requirements, increase opportunity for people to communicate grievances, and clarify roles and responsibilities with regard to reporting and review of unmet needs, allegations of abuse or neglect, and findings of deficiency. As most of you know, we've launched our DDA formal complaint system in January, and our Appendix F includes the DDA formal complaint system, which is our grievance system where people receiving supports or services may file a formal complaint. In regards to our Appendix G, it offers other means of communication by service coordination for follow-up to SRI. So service coordinators are responsible for follow-up regarding health and safety or unmet needs by telephone or email within 2 business days by acceptance of the IRC of an SRI excluding a death. In addition, updating 72 hours to 3 business days for SRIs involving an allegation of abuse or neglect or serious physical injury, the IMEU investigator conducts an in-person visit within 3 business days of assignment or by 5 p.m. the following day, a weekend or holiday, unless waived by the supervisory investigator. With our Appendix H, we changed the language from issues and identified to findings. DDS will continue to review the reports from DCE Health and analyze the data from the reports, but will not assign issues, sanctions, unless persons are in immediate jeopardy. Our proposed reimbursement changes, and finally, the district is proposing the following updates to reimbursement rate methodology included in Appendix I to incorporate following rate reimbursement and methodology changes included in the following. So our language modification includes the Universal Paid Leave Act and the new living wage rate. So there are no changes in the actual rate methodology. For any questions, comments regarding the proposed changes of our IDD waiver amendment, please submit that to Aisha Gray, Director of Long-Term Care Administration, Department of Healthcare Finance, and that's at 441 4th Street Northwest, Suite 900S, Washington, D.C. 2001, or email at dhcfpubliccomments@dc.gov during the 30-day public comment period beginning June 12th and ending July 13th. And I'll repeat that information again. For any comments, please send that to Aisha Gray, Director of Long-Term Care Administration, 441 4th Street Northwest, Suite 900S in Washington, D.C., 2001, or email dhcfpubliccomments@dc.gov during the 30-day calendar period, which began June 12th and ends July 13th. And I'll type that in the text box as well. So if you have any comments or questions, please type that in the chat box at this time.
And in the meantime, we're going to have Amanda Forsyth from Department of Healthcare Finance, the policy analyst. She's going to discuss the implementation timeline for the IDD waiver amendment.
Thanks, Chanel. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amanda Forsyth. I work at DHCF, and we just kind of wanted to give folks a quick overview of the timeline for implementation. So both the submission of the waiver amendment to CMS as well as the corresponding changes to the IDD waiver rule. So again, I'm happy to answer any specific questions if people have it afterwards, but just as a general sense, As Crystal just mentioned, the public comment period will be going until July 12th, and at which point we will compile and take a look at all of the public comments received, both in writing at the either the email or mail-in locations that had been up on the screen, or as well as those submitted today during the public forum, verbally or in the chat box. We will review all of those comments and discuss both DHCF and DDS, whether and if so, what responses or changes to the waiver amendment need to be made. So again, we take your comments seriously and appreciate any suggestions or recommendations. We will then amend or make any changes as needed to the IDD waiver amendment, and we will explain in our waiver amendment submission to CMS. They provide a section for us to explain essentially what additional changes we've made in response to public comment. We will then, after we've reviewed all of that internally, we will plan to submit the waiver amendment to CMS by the first week of August. And that gives sufficient time for CMS to review. They have 90 days to review the waiver amendment, and that will give them sufficient time to review and hopefully approve by the end of October, beginning of November, allowing for the November 1st effective date. At the same time, we will be working on making changes, proposed changes to the IDD waiver rule. So once we have, again, compiled and reviewed any necessary changes to the amendment based on comments that we've received, we will then do the same thing to our draft proposed rule changes. That will have to go through both our agency's internal review process as well as the external review process through the Deputy Mayor's Office and the Attorney General's Office, as well as the Mayor's Office, before then getting the proposed rules submitted for publication in the DC Register. So those will be published in the DC Register, hopefully by end of September, early October, and there will then be another public comment period based on those proposed rules. So the changes that you will see in the proposed rules will be similar to those that you see today in the waiver amendment, but they might be slightly different based on public comments received during this waiver amendment process. Again, once everything is been received from the public comments in the rules, hopefully by that point in time, we will have a approved waiver amendment, and we will then move forward with a final rulemaking to finalize those changes. Again, these processes are moving slightly simultaneously, but by November 1st, we hope to have an approved waiver amendment, and then following that, shortly thereafter, approved rules to implement those changes in the DCMR. Again, if there are any changes or any questions as to the specific timeline or when there will be a chance to participate, I'm happy to clarify in the chat box. But that's the basic overview. And again, we're aiming for that November 1st effective date for these waiver changes. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you, Crystal or Chanel.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, so we're going to open it up for the public comment period. We're going to start with the comments that have already been submitted in the chat box. So just be patient as we have multiple people in the from DHCF and DDS that may be able to answer your questions. So we're going to get started.
Hi, Chanel. This is Kirk. I'm also just going to chime in there and say we're going to address all the questions that are pertinent to this IDD waiver amendment. Other questions that you may have outside of the scope of this IDD waiver amendment, please send to either myself, kirk.dobson@dc.gov, or to Chanel or Crystal. So Crystal, Chanel, with that, please get started. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. One comment is just if, in terms of host home, if we can clarify limited informal support. And I'm not really sure what slide that is.
I have it up right now. The host home slide
Okay.
is on the screen.
Okay.
Want me to take it?
Everyone, can you mute your line so that there's no feedback when Winslow or Dr. Reese or Crystal or I try to respond to any of the questions? Thank you so much.
So with regard to limited informal supports as it relates to host home, what we're driving there is if a person has family members who are willing to support them, or if they can live with, within their communities with support from neighbors, friends, those are limited. Some people don't have access to their community or have support from friends, neighbors, or other family members. And so that's what is an informal support, one that's not paid. We're trying to help people have more inclusive lives without an over-reliance on paid staff. And some people actually live within their respective communities independently with supports that are informal, as well as some additional paid supports. So when we talk about limited informal supports, we're saying people who have not, over time, developed a network of people who can support them to live independently within their communities.
Okay. Thank you, Winslow, for that. In terms of supported living, what metrics are we using for this? What is the cap?
So I think there's a bit of confusion around what we are looking to do here. The agency has vacancies, and a vacancy by definition is if three people live together and they share the cost of living together just as you and I would, and one of those people moves out, the cost for that particular unit does not change. The cost is then spread out amongst those who are left behind. And we consider that a vacancy. And we capture that data to say if three people live together and the rent were $3,000 and one moves out, we say that there's a vacancy of $1,000 that is being paid with an empty bedroom. And several years ago, when we looked at the numbers, we had over $2 million worth of what we call vacancies. So we made a concerted effort to limit those vacancies. And to date, we've done well, and by matching people who have like interests and similar interests together. But there are times when that's not something that we can do. So then we would move to, with, of course, approval by the administration, to do what we call a new development, meaning we would then, but we have vacancies, we would then look to place a person in a new development. So it's not that we're limiting the service, we're limiting the utilization and being very cautious about and fiscally responsible, of course, and limiting having lots of vacancies in supported living.
And this is Andy. I just want to clarify. Our practice for years has been that new development must be approved by the deputy director. All we're doing here is establishing that as a regulation.
Why do you have a hard cap on sexual education with no option for more hours with the DDA's approval?
Well, what we've seen in terms of utilization is that this service is utilized, and where it is utilized, it's been effective, but it doesn't need to be utilized at 104 hours per year, and we've seen success with that. The goal of these type services is to support people live their best lives, but what we do know is the reinforcement by what's taught or learned from these services, for the most part, is carried out by our wonderful direct support professionals, family members carrying on. So information is exchanged in these sessions, and we would hope that that information is being captured by those who use the service and those who support those who use the service and reinforced. We do recognize that, we need to have the flexibility where that's not possible to extend the utilization.
Why is VDA making it more difficult to get supported living when there are open slots in the waiver?
I think Winslow responded to that question already, indicating that the change really isn't about making it more difficult to get supported living. It's just ensuring maximum utilization of our vacancies, and that we're exploring all possible existing placements before we do a new development for a placement.
A few minutes ago.
Hello?
I'm concerned about limiting this service, especially with those who may be involved with the justice system. There are not good natural supports out there in this arena. Can increased hours be authorized when needed?
If a person is involved in the justice system and the concern is that the person is involved related to issues with sex or sex crimes, those are issues of treatment and services that need to be a little more intensive than what we are providing with regard to sex education.
Why isn't education support services being offered in this waiver? Why is it only being offered in the IFS waiver?
When we looked at IFS, we looked at a target group of people based on their needs as they come in the door. People who utilize our IDD waiver, we see are people who have a higher acuity, and the thought was people who come into the IFS would have less of a need, but it's a good question.
Does Health and Wellness have any initiatives planned in this area? DC has an obesity and nutrition crisis. According to the Health Department, free community natural supports are lacking and may not be geared to people with disabilities. Providers could use more best practice models around this, especially around diabetes and hypertension.
So this is a very good point. Obesity is a national problem. We've had efforts as high as the White House working on this issue with the previous administration. And with regard to Health and Wellness's proposed initiatives with regard to these issues, it's certainly reasonable to have this as an effort. There are multiple resources available currently on this issue. And as leader of Health and Wellness, I can certainly make this a priority going in. But we need to also consider, when we talk about the waiver services, i.e. nutrition and fitness, what we have seen is people who utilize these services previously to the max year after year after year, and the results often are that people continue to gain weight and continue to not follow the diets that have been prescribed by the nutritionist. So it's definitely an issue that we need to work out us and our provider community.
Are there natural supports around massage therapy? Is Health and Wellness building a resource guide for all the natural supports?
First of all, I'm not aware of any natural supports regarding massage therapy. And in terms of building a resource guide, it certainly would be reasonable to consider that. The thing that I would say when we talk about resources, there's a wealth of information available, but it just seems as though people just need to know where to go and find it and use it. I'm always amazed at how, with the variety of providers we have within our cadre of providers, how information is often obtained and shared within certain provider groups. Clinicians and quality people are able to access resources that are there, and in some cases, we are the hub of information. So I believe that we definitely can create some resource guides for those who actually are unable to find them for themselves.
What has been the usage of the formal complaint system to date?
We have received 0 formal complaints to date.
Will today's chat box act as formal public comment?
Hey, Crystal, I can respond to this one.
Thank you, Eugene.
So today's discussion, any oral comments and any written comments we receive will be captured. There's a feature within the WebEx that allows us to save the chat as a file, so we're able to review it when we're responding to public input. So today's comments will be received. We will consider them, and any changes that are needed in response to public comment will be captured in the updated waiver. And when you see the new waiver application, there's a section called public input where stakeholders are able to see where the comment we received or DDS and DHF received, and then how we responded to that. So yes, today's comments will be part of the formal public comment process.
Okay, thank you, Eugene. So utilization can be extended under sexuality if needed? That was a question.
Yeah, I misspoke.
The current waiver does not provide for that, but we have heard comments from people suggesting that perhaps it should.
Can we have those utilization stats again for each of the services, not just the wellness ones? Maybe that is a supplementary document that can be provided. So Chanel, if you can pull up those stats from the presentation.
But you want to call up.
So what exact, the person who asked this question, I know you said you wanted more utilization data other than the wellness utilization. Are there specific services that you want specific data for?
Hey, Chanel, it's me. It's Ian.
Hi, Ian.
Hey there. And it's for, it's basically anything that got capped off. I see that the wellness stats that you have, and certainly if you've seen below the numbers that you're talking about. What the first quarter, are we talking that is October through December? On this stat page that you have, that's October through December?
No, because it's the waiver year, correct, Chanel?
November.
So is the waiver year January through?
No, the waiver year actually starts November 7th, I believe.
Yeah.
November.
But we count our data starting, if I'm not mistaken, from December 1. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that would be December, January, February data. Isn't that correct?
Yes, it went up until February 19th, 2020.
Okay, so this is first quarter during the winter.
Right.
Okay, so that's part of the question I had. That was a different one that I would have asked in a minute, in a minute. But the other one that I was going to ask is really about the usage. I know that Winslow talked about the fact that there are vacancies, and that's part of the way to kind of make things rectified. But I'm just talking about, like, on some of the things that have been capped, is there a way to figure out what the utilization was for some of the services, the larger services, not just the wellness ones?
But those are the only ones.
These are the only ones that have a utilization number?
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe it's people in services.
Well, the other limitations you're speaking of, perhaps, the large group day, which there's a limitation on creating any new large group day facilities. Right. And there's a limitation on creating any new facility-based employment readiness. And then there's just a process put in place. There's a limitation on new residential habilitation placements, not people in there.
Right, placements, I guess, is really the question.
Right. So you want the data on the number of people who have used employment readiness? I don't know that we have employment readiness facility-based as a separate data element.
Okay. Well, I'll chat with you offline, Andy. I don't want to bog down the presentation, like just to try and figure out what I want to try and drill down into, but I appreciate it.
But the actual limitations on the numbers that any person can receive are just the ones that are listed in this slide you're looking at now.
Gotcha.
But we can get you the data on any of the others that you want. If you just give us a list, we'll run the data.
That's what I'll do. Thanks so much.
In regards to assistive tech providers, thank you for adding that. Will those limits remain the same? What are those again? And will a protocol be developed for accessing this, or will it be done through ISP amendments?
In terms of the limits, I'll have to defer to Chanel. And with regard to accessing these services, it will be a part of the ISP amendment.
Yes, and the limitation, the $10,000 is the same. And remember that PERS is also included under assistive technology. But yes, and I've spoken with our provider enrollment contract administrator to alert him about all the residential providers being enrolled as assistive tech providers, so that this will be in place when the waiver amendment is approved.
The new complaint office operates like many of the DC agencies. Are the staff community and/or DC government staff? Would this complaint agency have a community advisory board that oversees or comments to meet monthly, et cetera?
So just so people are aware, the only change here is that we've included reference to our new complaint system in Appendix F of the waiver. The complaint system, which was passed into law in 2018, I believe, and new regulations passed for it, and we've just implemented. There's a complaint process that's been implemented in every provider location. There's a complaint process here at DDS. So there would be, and then there are independent, I want to say mediators, but an independent person outside the agency, if a complaint rises to that level, who would hear the complaint from the person. So if someone's interested, you can look at the DDS website at our complaint regulations to get more information about the complaint process. There is no outside community advisory board overseeing it, but there is an outside person who hears complaints, as I say, that are unable to be resolved until they get to that level. Complaints start with a provider, or if it's a DDS decision with DDS, then moves up the chain outside to someone independent, and then comes to me for a final decision, and can be appealed beyond that.
What will DDS put in place to support staff training? 21 hours is not enough hours to provide direct services to the person supported, complete assessments, and train staff.
Supports. I'm really not clear, except that what I believe the person is alluding to is the fact that they believe that there's not enough hours to provide training and direct for their direct support staff and complete. But 21 hours is not the limit, so I'm not really clear on.
Chanel, can you bring up the slide for the wellness, for the hours for nutrition? Okay, so the limit is 26 hours per year.
Hi, this is Tiffany. I'm Tiffany Sanders. I'm the one who made that comment. So what I was referencing was what Winslow was saying was that in terms of staff training, when you have staff turnover, staff need to be trained on any, the nutrition plans, and staff will need to be trained on any update to the nutrition plans. And I just don't believe that 26 hours a year is enough to do that.
Thank you.
What exactly does assistive tech provider mean? Does that mean providers purchase technology devices for people they support?
Correct. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I don't even know what the question.
All right, we have another question. Where would host home obtain transportation from? Another funding source?
No. I'm not really clear of what the question is. When people are living in host homes, we currently don't fund transportation in host homes. People have access to Metro Access and they can use MTM, but I'm not really clear.
I'm sorry, this is Doreen Hodges. I was the one that posted that question. I'm kind of new to DDS and stuff, and for my son accessing services. And I was just trying to figure out, basically, if you had a host home, where else would they, would individuals obtain transportation from if they wanted to go to, you know, community-based opportunities such as like church services and so forth and so on. How would they get there? Does it have to be funded from their own pocket, like through Uber or something like that, or does Medicaid or so forth, or does the host home provide that transportation service?
The latter. Host
The
home
last
provides
one?
that. The host
Okay.
home provides transportation.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
All of these slides will be provided on our website after the form is completed.
Which website? DHCF or DDS?
No, the DDS website.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you limit services below the average usage rates? Was this vetted by Project Action and DD Council?
All of these service limitations that are being discussed now are the ones that were discussed in our weekly, I'm blanking on the name of the Monday afternoon.
HCBS.
The
committee.
HCBS policy committee. We discussed all of these in those meetings. So yes, it has been considered by people who attended those meetings. I can't guarantee that representatives from DD Council and Project Action were at each of those, but generally they have been.
Who should we follow up with for additional questions and clarity during the open time period? So there's a slide to reach out to Aisha Gray, Director of Long-Term Care Administration, and it's DHCF Public Comments at dc.gov, DHCF Public Comments at dc.gov.
So this is Alice Weiss from Department of Healthcare Finance. If I could just add a note to the response that was just shared. The typical process for waiver amendments and consideration during the public comment period is not to have informal discussion with any particular stakeholders, but to have all conversations in a public or in a written format. If there are specific questions that you have that you want a response to, please feel free to submit them to that address. But in general, we usually communicate through the public comment process. So generally, stakeholders would submit their comments in writing or in this format, and then the responses we provide are provided to everyone. If there's a need, and we're happy to work with DDS on this, we'd be happy to create a frequently asked questions document and create a specific site for folks to submit comments and for us to provide responses. But apart from that, typically we would receive written comments and then provide responses in our updated submission before we submit to CMS. After our submission, we have more flexibility to have informal discussion with any parties that are interested. Thank you. And by the way, for those of you who don't know me, I am the policy director at DHCF, and I manage the group that is in charge of submission of our waivers and state plan amendments to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
We have a comment. You're requiring a person to be in urgent need of housing or homeless to get supportive living. You are not just requiring people to use available vacancies in the proposed changes.
That is not accurate. It should not be accurate. You are correct that that was discussed when we had the HCBS policy committee meeting. We heard people's input, and that was not included in our submission. If it was, it will be pulled back out, but that was something that was changed. The only thing referencing supported living here is just making a regulation of our current practice of requiring that the DDA deputy approve of any new developments in supported living.
It was definitely pulled out of the application.
We have another comment. People with higher acuity levels could also benefit from education services.
Thank you.
In regards to a previous question regarding whether the chat will serve as public comment, the chat in this webinar discussed will be considered as part of public comment on these submissions. Just scrolling through everyone to make sure we address all of your comments. Hold one moment. To clarify, do the wellness utilization numbers reflect 1 quarter's utilization, or do they reflect the year's utilization?
This data here was for 1 quarter, and we did review last year's entire year utilization, and it was very similar to what you see on this. Hold on, I'm about to put it up. The numbers last year are very similar to these numbers from first quarter.
But this quarter, you're not expecting that means that on average, people use 66 units of massage in 1 quarter, which means that they would use 200 in a year, are you?
No.
So clarify, please.
This is the unit. This is the units, not the hours.
How many is a unit?
15 minutes is 1 unit.
Which means that people used on average, it would help to provide that to people, the hours, since our limitation is in hours per year. So that, for example, for massage, the average units per user.
What I can do is, before we post this to our website, we'll adjust this so it says the average units and also the hours, so that there's no confusion on what these numbers mean. So I will update this slide before we post it on our website.
Thank you. And I just want to repeat what Deputy Kirk mentioned at the beginning of this forum. We're discussing the ID amendment today. Any other questions, we're happy to respond at other forums. We have a Friday forum at noon. So I see a question here in regards to job coaching, and I'm happy to add that to our list of questions. The waiver amendment states additional limitations on who can get access to supported living. Effective October 1st, 2020, a person may not enter into supportive living with transportation service unless the person has an emergency or urgent need for residential supports.
I think we just answered that question.
No, apparently it hasn't been corrected in all sections of the waiver submission. Does that appear to be accurate, Chanel?
Who asked the question? Can you tell me? Are you saying you still see that within the draft waiver application that is on our website?
Exactly. On page 84 for supported living with transportation, apparently it is still there.
Okay, that will be removed.
So that if that is there, which I believe you because you're citing the page number, it is an error and will be corrected.
Okay, this is Sandy. I don't know if you can hear me, but it's in several places.
Okay, thank you, Sandy.
You will search that sentence and delete.
How is a host home with no transportation responsible for transportation?
They need to work that out with the provider. The host homes are part of a provider agency, so that's a discussion between the host home provider and the agency that they work for.
So to get annualized numbers per hour, you would divide by 4 and then multiply by 4.
Exactly. So once I pulled up my calculator, which I should not have needed, the numbers here would be annual hours because the units, to translate units to hours, you divide by 4, and it's 1 quarter data, so you multiply by 4. So exactly, these would average out to the average hours used per year if the first quarter is representative of what happened in the subsequent 3 quarters.
Are there any other questions? We'll hold for any additional questions. Can you post the link to the actual written text of the amendment for those who might need it?
Sure.
I missed the answer to this. ResHab, are we intending to do away with this service? What is the thinking philosophy behind this?
We're not intending on doing away with the service. We're just not expanding in the same way we attempt to limit the expansion of intermediate care facilities, which are our most restrictive settings. So we feel we have more than an adequate number of residential rehabilitation settings currently.
Do all of the services that have caps allow for an extension on that cap based on assessed needs and approval by the deputy director? Or are there services that have hard caps that can never be extended?
Chanel?
Massage therapy, you can get it extended based on deputy director approval. Fitness, if you live in a natural home without in-home support, you can request an extension from the DDA deputy director. Nutrition is a hard cap, and currently sexual education isn't a hard cap, but we will take into consideration when people stated that there may be people who may require a extension for that service. My computer is frozen. If the PowerPoint is frozen, I apologize. Yes, some of the services we are allowing for clinical assessed need approvals by DDA Deputy Director, but nutrition and sexual education currently are a hard cap.
Okay, the slide is back up, Chanel.
Thank you. So yes, so fitness. So as you can see with massage, there is an extension for that. For sexual education, currently there is a hard cap for that. Next slide, fitness. We are allowing for the extension for people who live in natural homes without in-home supports. Nutrition, again, is a hard cap. And we also require that people have natural pay supports who can help them implement the learning. With bereavement, we did not make any changes to bereavement. That is still 100 hours.
Are there any additional questions? Please type it in the chat box. So we're hold. We have a comment. I would consider changing both sexuality and nutrition to be able to have extensions. Thank you. All services should be able to be extended with approval.
And I just want to clarify, I apologize, but nutrition you can get an extension on nutrition if the deputy director feels it is based upon an assessed medical clinical need. So I apologize for misspeaking on that. The only one that we did put the hard cap on was the sex education.
All right, so I think both nutrition and sexual education should allow for extensions. For a specific example, someone with Prader-Willi syndrome will always need extensive nutrition support. And we've addressed that.
And I think, as Chanel said, she was mistaken before when she said that nutrition did not allow for an extension.
It was that example that caused us to.
Can we see the initial slide with respect to new supported living approvals again? Chanel?
Yes, I'm coming.
Okay.
I'm having technical difficulties again, so bear with me while I'm going to close the PowerPoint out and reopen it. Okay, we're back. And you said it was the slide about supported living. Hold on 1 second.
Slide 12.
We don't see the slide, Chanel.
I know I had to pull it down because it froze again. 1 second.
Okay.
And you said slide 12?
That was the slide last night, unless the numbers have changed today.
And it's changed today because last night we had both services. 1 second. All right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this one more time, and hopefully it does not freeze this time.
Well, it is just one sentence, just so that while Chanel is working on posting that, what it says is adding restriction for no new homes unless determined essential by DDA Deputy Director.
What is the criteria that the DDA Deputy Director will use to determine whether new SL development is essential?
Well, essentially, the way the decision is made is you look at the needs of the person, you look at the available supported living vacancies within our inventory of vacancies. We have a referral committee that reviews all requests and then compare the person's need to the services that are provided for in supported living and the provider's capacity to be able to support. Usually, when we have new development, it is when providers have expressed concerns. We in the district do not require providers to take on supporting people when they have vacancies. In other words, providers can have vacancy, a person can be a challenging person to support, and our providers can say, I don't believe I can do that. And that's when we get into discussing new development. And interestingly, well, I'll say that.
So this is about new SL settings, not new SL authorizations, right?
Exactly.
Thank you for that.
Okay. We have a few more minutes. Are there any other comments or questions?
Oh, sorry, 我们小姐。
If a person is receiving host home and is refusing to return to the host home, can the provider offer SL?
This doesn't sound like it's a question that's related to our waiver amendment. This is a current practice issue, and so it should be addressed now with the provider agency and the service coordinator. Placement decisions are addressed by the team.
All right, we wanted to thank everyone for participating in today's IDD amendment, waiver amendment. Special thanks to DHCF for their partnership. And again, we had listed the slide for any comments through July 13th. I will type that information again for those of you who want to make additional comments outside of this forum. And that is Aisha Gray. Let me pull up the, if you can pull up that slide, Chanel, the last slide.
I'll try my best, but my computer's
Okay.
still giving me issues, so I apologize.
Okay. All right, for those on the line, please send any written comments to Aisha Gray at dhcfpubliccomments@dc.gov. And that's Aisha Gray at, send that to dhcfpubliccomments@dc.gov. All right, thanks again for everyone for joining us.